did something that should terrify you. The Coinbase CEO just confirmed that in 30 days, this stablecoin legislation will pass, which will allow Wall Street to freeze your bank accounts and take complete control of your money. Now, with all of this, if you don't believe me, see who Trump just pardoned, because all of this is connected, all encompassing in the crypto sphere and controlling your assets. But first, let's get through and listen to what Brian Armstrong, or Baldilocks, had to say about this new crypto legislation.
Areas in crypto like Coinbase should be regulated, not the protocols. And then, of course, we're making sure to preserve stablecoin rewards for you as well. The big banks are coming for their cash grab, trying to block that, even though it was just recently decided in the Genius Act, which just recently became law. We're not going to let them relitigate that. So with these last few issues getting wrapped up, we're hoping to see this bill come out of committee by Thanksgiving. That would be a great outcome. Fingers crossed. We're going to keep showing up for your rights, and we'll keep you updated. Thanks.
As Coinbase basically said there, we want to be regulated. We are a centralized entity, and this is what we came for, is regulation. And on top of it, he's now offering stable coin rewards to hold in Coinbase, giving at least 4.5%. And he's claiming, oh, it's the big banks. The banks didn't like you. The banks are the reason why this couldn't happen with just dollars. But not so fast, my friend. We're going to dive into how the banks are now loving stable coins too. But first, we're got to keep diving into more of Coinbase and how they are partnering with Circle. And this is a little fishy, because if you take a step back and really dissect all of the stable coins here, there's a lot of nefarious activity that's going on, and they're not necessarily there for the Bitcoin ethos, let's just say. Now, Coinbase has taken stake in Circle and is now essentially, let's call it, encouraged, or doesn't really have any sort of non-bias towards USDC. So they're always going to be pushing USDC over any other stablecoin. And now, Coinbase taking a stake in Circle is now that these two companies will close down the Center Courtism, a private governance organization for USDC, and it'll set it up to help guide this policy around that. So essentially, Coinbase and Circle are joining forces in order to now lobby. And at one point in time, Brian Armstrong came out and said that he doesn't believe that he needs to be involved in politics because that is just not his realm, right? But now he's getting awfully involved. I mean, we've seen these selfie videos from Baldilocks literally every single week where he's in Capitol Hill just talking about all of this. So now that he's close with Circle, let's take a step back and look at some of the things that Circle has notably done. Circle has notably freezed 58 million USDC because it was linked to the Libra meme coin scandal. Of course, that Libra meme coin was to do with President Javier Milei over in Argentina. So that's a little interesting little wrinkle there, that Circle is all the way in with Javier Milei and this Libra scandal. And Javier Milei was hanging out over at Trump's house at Mar-a-Lago when Trump got elected, and he was always there, and he's always been around. In fact, he was there in the White House just fairly recently saying that, Argentina is given full support. And if you take a step back, Argentina, the United States just bought billions worth of their essentially worthless currency at this point. So you got to ask yourself with all of this, if that Argentina is extremely connected to this Libra token, USDC just, we're SEC regulated, we'll magically shut down this crypto meme scam in order to avoid any backlash. Well, they won't stop there, right? They've mulled reversible USDC stablecoin transactions. Now, what is one of the qualities of Bitcoin that we all know and love? It is quick and final, folks. And make sure you guys are smoking that like so we battle the algorithm on this one, because I think that the YouTube lords might try to stop this message from getting out. But either way, Circle is mulling the reversible USDC stablecoin transactions in a push for TradFi adoption. We're going to get into more of TradFi there, but obviously Bitcoin's transactions being full and final is a huge benefit to all of this. I mean, a lot of these things, like stablecoins, are looked at to help accelerate and improve the current banking system. Bitcoin and Coinbase, on the other hand, are saying, hey, you know what? Banks are bad. We don't want to be like banks. You shouldn't be trusting banks with your money. Yet they're literally doing everything and encouraging stablecoins, which the United States largest banks are all in on. So it makes you think, why are these guys all in on stablecoins and continuing to push this legislation instead of going to a truly decentralized protocol like Bitcoin? I digress. We'll keep diving in to all of this here. But this reversible transaction is just the start of a lot of it, because now they say, hey, we also have a centralized entity where we can control and freeze accounts if we think something nefarious is going on. And they are the judge of all of this. On top of it, hey, you know what? I send my buddy 100 USDC. Well, they don't like how my buddy's been acting, so they're going to reverse that transaction or seize that 100 USDC. Because at this point, the United States government hasn't bought any Bitcoin, but magically they have over 300,000 Bitcoin. We're going to get into that too later. But looking at all of this, right? When we see Circle mulling over these reverse transactions, this is just directly away from the Bitcoin ethos. And Coinbase is reaping that benefits of the growing rewards from Circle and the ties to this USDC economics. Because if you could just park your money magically in Coinbase and get 4.5%, well, that sounds like a no-brainer, right? I mean, if it's no risk, allegedly, that's what they're selling. These stable coins, why is there any risk? It's simply backed by the US dollar, and somehow they're able to give 4.5% yield. You have to ask yourself, if you're not quite clear where the yield is coming from, you are the yield, my friend. So with this, right, stable coins, and in the United States, that legislation requires you to be one-to-one backed. So where are they getting this additional 4.5%? Really makes you think about all of this now. And Coinbase is reaping the benefits of all of this, right? After they've applied for those federal trust banking license. They came out and said, oh, we have no ambition to become a bank. This is not what we are going for at all. But if you really take a step back and look, it's not what they say, watch what they do, right? They've partnered with Samsung here recently, and I did a video on this channel about that, on how they want to be able to send USDC via text message or over the phone via Samsung Pay. So if you want to be able to send transaction from one person to the other, you have to apply for these banking license. And in this banking license, you need these stablecoins, which are centralized entities and can thus have transactions reversed. What makes you better than any of these banks that we're talking about here? So it makes me really wonder, as we're going back here and watching, hey, Coinbase applying for all of this and continuing to push forward with USDC, and on top of it, the government's involvement now with Tether. I mean, we've seen Bo Hines go from one place to the other. He actually tweeted this out here the other day, which I thought was very interesting.
Well, you don't know much about crypto. You know nothing about nothing. You fake news. Well, you know.
So he's saying, oh, you know nothing about nothing. It's all fake news. You don't know anything about crypto. And you see, this designation that is not getting towards Bitcoin is very worrisome. Now, make sure you guys are smoking that like, because I'm going to keep going through all of this, but we need to battle this algorithm because this message needs to get out. I've been screaming to the rooftops about these guys, about Tether has already acknowledged they've frozen 1.6 million. It's connected to alleged terrorism financing. Now, I'm on YouTube, so I can't dive into it fully, but just look up how they defined this. It is a very vague definition. Therefore, buying Bitcoin and taking it off an exchange could be a call for callbacks. And if they're taking it in USDC, they can freeze all of those things. And if you have your Bitcoin on exchange, they can call for that. I mean, California, for Christ's sake, has now said that they're going to treat Bitcoin that is not moved as after 3 years as property. And so if it's unclaimed property, it hasn't moved over 3 years, well, there's a chance that California could seize that. Of course, they're fighting that. So that is not, necessarily 100% the case just yet, but it is something that we need to be very cautious and watch out for. Because when we're looking at these guys, they're not our friends, folks. Let's just be honest here. They are not our friends. These politicians, they want to see everything that they can do in order to control the money system. That's the plain and simple answer. They're looking for all of this, right? So with the United States, right, we've got some of the biggest banks in the world. And one of the biggest banks and the biggest Bitcoin bears on the planet, he's said that Bitcoin can be used for money laundering. Bitcoin is not freedom technology, right? It's all of the negative things. It's bad for the environment. Bitcoin, let's just go down the long list of what Jamie Dimon has to say about Bitcoin. I mean, nothing is very good. But what he is saying is that Chase will get involved in stablecoins. He says that he doesn't get the appeal of stablecoins, but he also can't afford to stay on the sidelines because it announced it'll launch a limited version because it's going to do a JP Morgan coin. So Jamie Dimon, Citigroup, Bank of America, they want to get involved on these stablecoins, right? So all of the big banks have realized at this point in time, they are losing their power. They are losing their power. They're losing their ability to control your finances if you go all in Bitcoin. So what is the flip side of it? Well, we can control USDT. We can control USAT, Tether's new stablecoin that coincidentally is now being used for the United States because USDT, the biggest stablecoin in the world, didn't fit the United States standards. And now Circle, a publicly traded company on the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ for the US, who's, oh, we're great. We want legislation. We want you guys to govern us more. We want to be good players of all of this. It's very interesting, all of this, right? So when you look and take a step back at how the United States is handling stablecoins, it really makes you think. And when you see things like Donald Trump use the word crypto continuously, and to be honest, when he talked at the Bitcoin conference, he didn't really have a huge grasp understanding of it, the difference between Bitcoin and crypto. All he knew is there is a difference. So good on him for knowing that. But why are we pushing this stablecoin so heavily? And this recent pardon that I'm going to get into later, well, I think there's a connection here with that as well. But in this bull run, you guys want to be stacking aggressively, folks. You don't want to have anything out of question. So with that, you don't want to sell your Bitcoin at all. If you need to unlock some purchasing power during this bull run, I recommend Salt Lending. You go to saltlending.com/greencandle. I believe All Nighter Hider put that in the chat here earlier. So shout out to him in the chat. I'll pull that up here in a second. But you can go there, and they've got some of the greatest options in the space for this, borrowing against your Bitcoin. It's pristine collateral, folks. We've got rates starting at 8.95%, that 12-month duration and 70% LTV. Those are honestly some of the best rates you can get in the industry. Full stop. So as we're watching banks like Jamie Dimon start to get into this and major banks explore issuing stablecoins pegged to G7 currencies, just realize, as Knox Bill is saying, that if you're buying these stablecoins and they're giving you massive yields, you are the yield. And it is pretty tough to get that bank charter unless you're fully cooperative. All-nighter hider. And that unclaimed property rights is a real problem. I agree with you. They are trying to literally get everything with us at this point. I mean, I'm over here in Europe and they're trying to get scans of everything. I'm trying to avoid it as much as possible, folks. But I mean, it is tough over here to say the very least. And, you know, when you start to get these G7 backed stable coins like we are seeing, you know, we've already had Christine Lagarde over here say, hey, you know what? Look at China. China has had this successful launch to their stable coin. And it's their essentially CBDC. And that all of this is okay, right? The stable coin will lead to the privatization of money. So she's speaking out against it, coincidentally here. Good old Christine Lagarde. So it's all undermining her, right? So she's worried about all of that, unless they can control these stable coins. So now if they go mainstream and they go into the banks, like we're seeing, that should raise the red flags, folks. Raise the red flags, to say the very least, right? Because if we continue to see these stable coins go mainstream, banks and credit card firms issuing their own crypto tokens, what makes this any better? Make sure you guys are hitting that like for me too, because I think we're getting a little shadow banned here. So we got to combat that algo. And these stable coins, right? I want to warn you guys about all this because I don't think a lot of people are talking about this. I think people look at these stablecoins and this Genius Bill Act as a major positive for the Bitcoin space. I think it's on the contrary. At the end of the day, everything is good for Bitcoin, and this will push people to more Bitcoin, especially if we get Coinbase and other players doing nefarious things with stablecoins. But the fact that we're giving them the opportunity to potentially do nefarious activities with these stablecoins is what worries me. So we need to continue to resist these centralized entities, because these centralized entities offer a single choke point, right? I mean, they were even calling it choke point 2.0, right? Elizabeth Warren was spearheading that movement. She was, you know, the one that we could always point to that it was just her. She was being so negative towards Bitcoin and the crypto industry. But thousands have lost their access. Over $1 million were frozen, right? Oh, it's just a tech issue. Well, literally yesterday, we had a major AWS outage, which put a lot of banks down. So these AWS outages, these little things, one single point of failure could make sure that you don't have access to your money. And these things are coming very quickly, right? They're becoming more commonplace. And now that we have Trump pardoning CZ, I think this is all very connected, because CZ, according to the last administration, was caught for money laundering. And Binance has historically always cooperated with authorities. And now that Trump is profiting off of it and potentially moving more into that space, he's pardoned CZ. Now let's listen in to what he had to say.
Talking about the crypto person, a lot of people say that he wasn't guilty of anything. He served 4 months in jail, and they say that he was not guilty of anything. That what he did, well, you don't know much about crypto. You know nothing about nothing. You fake news. But let me just tell you that he was somebody that, as I was told, I don't know him. I don't believe I've ever met him, but I've been told by a lot of support. He had a lot of support.
So yeah, because Trump had this guy in there locked up and he had a lot of support. Oh, well, he'll let him out because, hey, it's the crypto industry, right? It's been so friendly to Donald Trump throughout this time. And this pardon, well, I think it is majorly significant to all of this all-encompassing picture where we have now USDC and Coinbase very much linked into all of this legislation in these stablecoin bills. Then on top of it, we've got Tether. Tether has been linked. Well, I mean, the direct link that you can all see is Bo Hines straight from the government to now that. My apologies. I was getting a phone call. I don't know why somebody is calling me all the way over here. But on top of it, after we get all of that, right, we get Trump pardoning CZ, who is essentially never been allowed to regulate and move into the United States at any point in time. I mean, it's another scenario where they have Binance for the rest of the world and then Binance US. Why is that? Does the US just have so much more stringent regulations than everywhere else? Is every other country not protecting their investors like the United States? Or did the United States want this backdoor to be potentially confirmed? You got to ask yourself that, right? So as CZ, who's never met Donald Trump, they broke their silence, right? They froze 47 million of USDT at one point in time. The company took action to freeze the funds after reports of fraud. See, look at these. These specificities of the words here is very interesting because they aren't saying, oh, that this was confirmed fraud. This was linked to the Libra token. No, no, no. Binance just froze everything because, hey, there was suspected fraud, right? This was a potential issue. So as we continue to dive in and really take a look at how, all of this is connected, it's very interesting, right? Because we've got now Tether, as I was going over, Tether and Bo Hines, who literally left the White House to go work in the privatized industry. After helping craft the Genius Act, he went directly to a privatized company who can benefit off of his knowledge. Well, I mean, let's be honest here. And then we've also got Howard Lubnick in there as well, who has a very close tie from Cantor Fitzgerald to Tether. So Howard Lubnick and Cantor Fitzgerald formerly were one. Obviously, now he's in the government, but Cantor Fitzgerald and 21 have all backed with Tether and Jack Mallers, all to buy up Bitcoin and become a major treasury company. Now, of course, it would be advantageous to partner with Cantor. It would be advantageous to partner with Tether because they have big bags. Let's be honest. They have a lot of money. But this connection between the government and these entities that are stockpiling Bitcoin gives me the heebie-jeebies, to say the very least, folks. And they even have this on their website, why Binance might freeze your account. So all of these guys, and make sure you guys are hitting that like for me so we can battle that algo. We've got literally Binance openly admitting, hey, we will freeze your account if, the authorities tell us to. No questions asked, right? And all of these guys, right? They're all just scooping up Bitcoin and getting up a bunch of debt in order to buy as much Bitcoin as possible, right? Of course, we've got Strategy, MSTR with 640,000. But the other unique thing that we've seen here recently is that the United States, I don't know if you guys could see it because the chart is really small, but the United States had this hockey stick movement where the United States seized another over 100,000 Bitcoin. So if you ask yourself, all right, if the United States is saying, hey, we only want to steal, or we don't want to buy Bitcoin, we want to confiscate it. Well, what's the easiest way to do that? Being able to confiscate and control the on and off ramps. We already saw that already with Choke Point 2.0, but the difference with this time is that they aren't masquerading, or they're masquerading it with a stablecoin. They're saying, hey, stablecoins are our friends, right? Stablecoins are something that could help us pay off the national debt. Stablecoins are a benefit. And the stablecoin guys have realized that they're getting their bags pumped with all of this, right? They're getting richer. So Brian Armstrong saying, hey, we welcome regulation. Centralized entities like Coinbase, we want to be regulated. It's insane. And then we just can't do anything because we can't get in those kinds of rooms and vote on these types of topics while these big money players are just getting in. And, at the end of the day, we've got Bitcoin sitting at just around 110,000, which is very curious, I would say. We're about flat on the day. Look, like I said, I am over in Europe, so it's 6:30 p.m. nearly my time. But, year to date, we're only up 18%, which, for all encompassing purposes is not necessarily a great Bitcoin bull run. But if you take a step back and look at why that might be, right? 110,000. I've been showing you guys this for a while, so if you're not already subscribed, make sure you do that. But 2.16 million Bitcoin has been left on exchanges currently, but something peculiar has happened here recently. I've been yelling to you guys from the rooftops about the potential of a short squeeze, largely in part because it would be led by OTC desks, because we've seen these big players start to come in. But all of a sudden, we've had the OTC desks flooding more Bitcoin. Now you got to ask yourself, right? When these OTC desks, when they're pumping Bitcoin in there, who is buying from those OTC desks? More than likely it's Coinbase and BlackRock, right? These big players that are custodying for these guys. And in reality, it's not just Coinbase, right? Or BlackRock. Coinbase is custodying for BlackRock. So these guys are all interconnected, and Coinbase could be custodying for the United States government as well. I mean, they had articles come out that they were already. So all of these connections here, if you just line out a timeline of events, do with that information what you will. But what I'm seeing here is some sketchy behavior, to say the very least. Make sure you guys are still hitting that like button for me to battle the algo, because we're just getting started here, folks, because we're seeing more activity from these Bitcoin whales, who now is seeing a $227 million short go on. And now it is looking at it all, and this major correction is potentially around the corner. Allegedly. Or what do these whales know? Now, of course, you could play games with your Bitcoin like potentially these whales are doing, or you could look at getting your Bitcoin off an exchange. I'm here in Prague because I was here at this great Trezor event. Trezor just released the Trezor Safe 7. And they're setting the standard. Honestly, this thing was super sleek. It was amazing. You guys could go to the affiliate link down below. Get yourself the Trezor 7. It is quantum resistant. It's got all of the worries that you might have. It makes it quick and easy. Trezor is the best product out there. It is the slickest hardware wallet. I highly recommend it. I use it to store my Bitcoin. So I recommend you guys doing that as well. It's the best solution. And then hardware wallets are nice, but if you lose your hardware wallets and you have your seed phrase, well, you're still okay. So go to cryptosteel.com/green-candle today, and you can get any type of backup. They've got multiple here. You can get all of that. Do it today. And you could get that, and you can see that they've got a tamper seal for all of these, right? So you got the solo, you can get the dimes, the blondes, you can see all these things. You could get the tamper seals for all of it, which will make sure that if somebody sees your seed phrase or whatnot, that, you know, if they tampered with it, you're going to know. And that's the unique thing about Crypto Steel, because every other hardware punch plate, you can't tell if somebody saw it until you go and check. Right? So make sure you guys are doing that and backing it up securely and closely, because, you know, we're looking at a revolution of stablecoins really flooding the market here, to say the very least. And this revolution, I don't think it is a positive. I think they're all going to be looking at it as a way to potentially, let's just say, a way to potentially control and take everything back under the ruse that, hey, it's crypto, it's faster, we're updating technology, all of these things that all of us know and love about the Bitcoin industry, but doing it under the ruse that, hey, we're trying to help you out. In reality, get your Bitcoin off exchange, and I'm going to be covering all of that for you guys here. So make sure you guys are subscribed. Get your Bitcoin off exchange. Use a Trezor. Use a Crypto Steel. Use promo code Green Candle. And I'll catch you guys all at the next one.